Hi! Welcome to this part of my review featuring When the Moon Hangs Low role-playing game. If you haven't seen the other parts of my review featuring this Bloodborne style of RPG, please check out the playlist in the description below. In this part of the review, we are going to talk about combat actions and damage. Let's start with primary actions. When it comes to attack, the character attacks their target with the weapon, either close combat or ranged, they are currently armed with. The character makes an attack skill check, and the defender makes a defense skill check. If the attacker is successful, they deal damage to their target. If you wish to defend yourself, you gain a bonus, a plus 1d6 to all defense skill checks until the beginning of your next turn. If a character has been staggered, the defend action removes that effect in addition to providing the defense bonus. You can also create an opening. You use your action to create an opening in the target's defenses, rather than injuring them. This action deals no damage, but instead staggers the target. A target remains staggered until they use the defend action to recover. In battle, you can also use an item, such as a potion, a toolkit, a rope, etc. The exact effects of using an item vary. When it comes to secondary actions, we have move. The move action allows a character to travel at a slow jog or brisk walk. A character may move up to their physique plus 10 in yards. Move may be used to move into close combat, out of close combat, or anywhere else suitable. If the move would involve the character vaulting over obstacles, then an athletics skill check may be required at the game master's discretion. Concerning reload, the character reloads a ranged weapon and readies it for use if you decide to use this action. If you want to change weapons, the character swaps their weapon for another they have handy. This could be sheathing a sword and pulling out a pistol, grabbing a rifle from the floor, or anything similar. When it comes to using a skill, sometimes a character may want to use a skill in combat. This could include making a stealth check to hide from enemies, using the medical kit to aid another character, or using Intimidate to try and scare off an attacker. Now let's talk about attack variations. Sometimes a character may wish to make an attack that does not deal damage as normal. There are 3 variations on the normal attack action: stun, grapple, and disarm. Each of these requires the character to use a primary attack action, and in each case, the attacker and defender make their attack and defense skill checks as normal. But in the case that the attacker succeeds, certain effects will apply. There is stun. Rather than dealing damage, this attack is intended to stun or knock an opponent unconscious. There is grapple. This attack is intended to pin another, preventing them from acting. And there is disarm. This attack is intended to knock a weapon from the target's hand. Now, when it comes to actually hitting a target, to hit an enemy in combat, a character must make a successful skill check based on the type of weapon they are using. Both ranged and close combat attacks are resolved with opposed skill checks. If the attacker hits the target, they can deal damage based on the weapon they are using. To attack an enemy in close combat, a character must be close enough to strike them, of course. But when it comes to attacking in ranged combat, a character must be within the listed range of the weapon they are using, and you must be able to see your target. Concerning defense skill checks, when a character is the target of an attack, they can choose how they wish to defend themselves. There are 3 available options depending on the nature of the attack and the desired outcome, and all of these options are based on skill checks, of course. There is parry. The character attempts to knock aside the attack with their own weapon. There is dodge. The character attempts to dodge the attack by ducking, weaving, or a similar move. Then we have counterattack. The character attempts to counterattack instead of evading the blow. When it comes to minions and defense, some game masters might want to cut down on rolling dice when the players are in combat with large groups of minions. Creatures listed as minions in the Antagonist chapter have an additional stat in their profile called Dodge Average. Rather than rolling to parry, dodge, or counterattack, game masters use the Dodge Average of a creature as a flat difficulty value to work out if the player character has hit the creature or not. Then we have attack modifiers. In certain situations, attacking an opponent will either be easier, due to taking aim for example, or more difficult, due to fighting in darkness. In these situations, a character may gain a number of bonus or penalty dice to their attack or defense skill check. Some examples could be staggered. If a character attacks a target that is staggered, they gain a bonus to their attack skill check. If you take aim, you have a chance to hit your target easier when using a ranged weapon. Or perhaps you caught an enemy by surprise from behind and you have a bit of time to aim that well-placed blow on the back of the enemy's head. When it comes to close range, if a character is using a ranged weapon at less than half the listed range, you get a bonus to your attack skill check as well. There are also details concerning cover, blinded, obscured vision, helpless. They all apply a certain bonus or penalty, depending on the situation. Then we have two-weapon fighting. If a character wishes to fight with a weapon in each hand, they can do so. This allows the character to make an attack with each weapon each time they use the attack action. Two-weapon fighting can be used in either close combat or ranged combat. However, depending on the weapons they are armed with, they will add one or more penalty dice to their attack skill checks. For example, if one or both of the weapons have the light quality, then the character adds a single penalty die to the second attack skill check. Or if neither weapon is light, then the character adds a penalty die to both attack skill checks. Now, when it comes to using ranged weapons in close combat, while some firearms excel at hitting close range targets, once an opponent gets too close, ranged weapons become ill-suited to the hurly-burly of melee combat. A character using a ranged weapon in close combat adds 2 penalty dice to their attack skill check. Let's talk about damage. Once an attack has hit its target, the attacker has to work out how much damage they've done. To calculate damage, the player rolls a number of d6s as indicated in the weapon entry and adds the resulting numbers together to determine how much damage is inflicted. Whenever a character takes damage, their health is reduced by that amount. While losing health hurts, a character's abilities are not reduced or affected by their loss. When it comes to armor, if a character is wearing armor, it reduces damage taken by the amount equal to the armor's armor value. Now, if an attack deals more than 10 damage in a single hit after being reduced by armor, then the character takes 1 wound in addition to losing health. If a character is reduced to 0 health, then they take 1 wound for every subsequent attack that inflicts at least 1 damage, regardless of how much damage the attack does. Once a character feels his or her wound track, they begin dying. During this time, they are referred to as bleeding out. Wounds are gory and unpleasant, but they do not affect a character's ability to perform until their wound track is full. Game masters may choose to describe exactly what a certain wound entails, but in general, the effects should be narrative rather than mechanical. You have a table of example effects included in this rulebook, perhaps resulting in several bones breaking. The target's breath rattles in their throat. Or perhaps a huge spray of blood soaks both target and attacker. Now, when it comes to bleeding out, a character who is bleeding out has a number of rounds equal to their physique to receive medical attention before they die. To stop a character dying from bleeding out, another character must make an average medical skill check. Success means that the character is stabilized and is no longer bleeding out. However, it does not remove any wounds from their wound track. While bleeding out, a character who still has any health remaining can continue to act, but in this state, they add 2 penalty dice to all skill checks they make. Characters who are bleeding out and with no remaining health are either unconscious or disabled to the point of helplessness. If a character feels their wound track and begins bleeding out outside of a combat situation, they have 30 seconds per point of physique to receive medical attention, rather than measuring the time in rounds. Now, when it comes to death, there are a few ways a character can end up dead. The most common way is to feel their wound track and bleed out. Characters can also die through failing an extremely difficult skill check, although this is uncommon, or through negligent action by their player. Negligent actions are extremely dangerous, such as jumping into moving machinery or standing next to a bomb that is about to detonate. In such situations, it is advisable that the game master gives the player an impossible skill check to try to see if their character survives. But the player should be aware that the price of failure is the loss of their character. Another way a character can die is through conscious sacrifice. When it comes to minions, that is minor non-player characters, only have one wound regardless of their physique. When it comes to unarmed damage, a character's unarmed strikes such as punches, kicks, headbutts, etc. inflict damage based on their physique stat. You have a table indicating this damage. When it comes to damage from other sources, there are a number of other ways a character can take damage apart from combat, such as suffering fire damage, falling, suffocation, and the like. And this concludes this part of the review. In the next part we're going to talk about other actions and things, such as healing, light, jury-rigging items, downtime actions, experience points, and we're also going to talk a bit about how to run the game as a game master. As you can see, there are many possibilities for unorthodox actions in combat. You have all of these rules to apply or adjudicate when it comes to anything that the player wants to attempt with his or her player character. The game strikes a nice balance between cinematic action and grittiness, so there won't be a nagging downward spiral effect as you are taking damage, but once you reach a certain threshold, your character is most likely going to bleed out or perhaps dying outright, depending on the context, on the situation. Thank you for watching this part of the review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending drive-thru RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.